Hi, guys.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Chrissy, and welcome to our podcast. So, today, for our first episode, we'll be talking about why we started this podcast. So, Jeff, do you really want to know what makes you decided to start this podcast?
I just think that there's a lot of men like me from Generation X that are just in a very similar situation.
Okay, so what do you mean about Generation X? It's a new term for us.
Okay, so Generation X is a very Western/American term, and it represents people who were born from the mid 60s, late 60s, and the 70s. And so, what it represents is a generation of people who were born after the baby boomers, after
Okay,
World War
yeah.
II. So, from 1945 to about 1965, they're called the baby boomers. And people who were born between 65 and 80, they're called Generation X. So the reason why I say there's a lot of men like me is because the men who were born between 65 and 80, a lot of them were kind of screwed over in a lot of the decisions that America was making in the workplace.
Okay.
One, they went from pensions to 401ks. So you had a lot of new companies not knowing what they were doing with 401k savings. A lot of them not having very good ones. A lot of them taking them away. And so you go through your work era, if you
Okay,
will,
yeah.
and as a man who was in Generation X, a lot of men found themselves behind baby boomers and waiting for baby boomers to retire and for that big promotion. So a lot of times when you retire, the majority of your retirement is in the second half of those years, from about 40 to 65. Well, a lot of men weren't getting that promotion right away or weren't getting that raise, or their company took away their 401k or whatever it was. And so there's a lot of men in their 50s right now and early 60s, and they're looking at their 401k, they're looking at their savings and looking at their debt situations going, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Mhm.
And, I was in that situation. And so 2 or 3 years ago, I just said, you know what, I'm going to have to work until I'm 70. I'm going to have to get rid of this debt that I had. I didn't have a lot of debt, but I had to get rid of some debt. And I was going to have to work till 70. Probably not reach my retirement goal that I had when I was in my 20s, but pretty close and pay off my mortgage that, I could live a decent life when I was, in my 70s. And so I start contemplating and looking for other ideas or opportunities of retirement.
Okay.
A lot of people would suggest, well, why don't you retire in Panama? Or why don't you go and retire in Costa Rica or
Wow.
Thailand
Yeah.
or Vietnam or the Philippines? And so I researched all 5 of those areas. And I thought the one that stuck out to me the most was the Philippines. And why the Philippines is they have a great cost of living. So basically your income's going to be, and your wealth is going to be tripled. So that's a big factor. Also, the people in the Philippines speak fluent English. And so I have visited 3 times, as you know, and everyone speaks decent English and most speak fluent English. So communication usually isn't very difficult. Like the hardest part is maybe sometimes you'll pronounce a word funny, or you may not know a complicated or a fancy word that I use, right? But for the most part, we can communicate pretty well. And I would say that happens when I was in the Philippines with people there too. So the Philippines also has women there that are much more traditional compared to what I found for Thailand and Vietnam. Like, I really wasn't interested in dating a bar girl or a former bar girl who'd been
Right.
ran through. I
No
was
one
looking.
wants that. Yeah.
Well, some might. Some guys want it easy and just are looking for easy. But that wasn't my cup of tea. And if you want that, fine. But I was looking for a more traditional woman who is much more loyal, much more bonded to me, and much more traditional in a household situation. Like, I like the fact that you cook, babe. So that's a big plus.
Am I a good cook?
Very good cook. But
Nutritional balance.
that's not why we're doing this podcast. Is not to talk about your wonderful cooking. Getting back to Generation X
Okay,
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
men like me. So a lot of us don't have savings or big enough savings
Yeah.
to retire easily without continuing to work. We had bad employers, or we were blocked by baby boomers. And then, obviously a lot of us are divorced. And when we got divorced, we got castrated by the court system. It's a very woman-oriented system where we lost a lot of our resources and what we saved up for and what we earned that went to the woman who didn't earn it, but the court system thinks she is more deserving. So then we began dating Western women, and I find them extremely entitled. I can go over 1,000 scenarios where one woman wanted me to go to 3 fancy restaurants and have them already situated and set up and reserved. Another woman was willing to go to the next level, but not until I got a fancier car or a fancier house.
Cars. Right?
Yeah, because women in America don't just want a 666 man. They want a man where their neighbors know that they've leveled up. They don't want to just be happy and comfortable. They want to look the part, like they had, found their prince. I think it's the Disney thing, like, oh, my Prince Charming, he's so wonderful with his, $500K job as a doctor and, with his millions of dollar savings. That's what they're looking for. But they also want to look the part. So it just got really, really frustrating. And then the dating apps don't help very much because they're just interested in, extracting money. You can only swipe right like 5 times. And so then you have to swipe your 5 times and then wait to see if you can get a response. So it was just getting more and more frustrating. And I've always been a big believer that if you want a different result, sometimes just take a different path. And that's what I decided to do. I decided to investigate these different countries. I decided to settle on the Philippines because I think it was easier to find a more traditional woman, a woman that I could communicate with. And I just began visiting the Philippines, and I found you. And I'm extremely happy that I found you. And I think a lot of men, if they do their homework, do their vetting, can find a high quality woman and find a great retirement opportunity in the Philippines. So again, going back to the question, why did we start this channel? Well, because I think there's a lot of men like me. I think the Philippines offers a high quality woman that you can bring back to the United States, or you can move to the Philippines and begin your retirement.
And I think they can relate, mostly foreign men.
Yes. And so, there's lots of podcasters that will go out there and say, boots on the ground, meaning, you go to the Philippines, you find your woman either through a dating app or, at a coffee shop or however you get fortunate to meet a woman and just begin retirement and find your woman there. I'm not quite ready to retire. I'm probably at least a year away, maybe a little bit longer. We've talked about that. Yeah. So I was happy to find you and willing to bring you back here with our K1 visa, story. We'll get into that in a different podcast because that was, oh my God. Yeah. That will take some time in its own podcast. But, it is a decision that, that Jeff 5-10 years ago may not have been willing to make. But I'm glad I did. And again, I think you'll find a very high quality woman. And I think there's lots of women like you. You have friends and acquaintances that are like you. Again, not all women in the Philippines are angels. There's clearly gold diggers in there. Yeah. There's a lot of toxicity, and we both ran into that with my family and your family. And, you have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared for gold diggers. You have to vet. And we can talk about that later. But I just think there's a lot of high quality women in the Philippines that are a little bit more traditional. A lot of them go to church, but not regularly because of the work schedule that Filipinos have to go through. Like yourself, you had to work 6 days a week. And it was
really
very,
crazy.
very difficult for you to go to church. So you picked and choose when you would go to church. But that doesn't mean you're not religious. And so, again, I think finding a high quality woman is a lot easier in the Philippines than in the
Mhm.
West. And so I chose the Philippines over other countries. And, I think it's the best decision I've ever made. So to summarize, I think that a lot of Western men, a lot of Generation X men have a great opportunity in the Philippines in particular in finding a high quality mate,
Right.
someone that will make their retirement better,
Yes.
who will be a complement,
Yeah.
not a complication, and
Yeah.
are looking to serve you as their most important person or their most important item in their life, and rather than consistently asking for more and more and more from the man, and what can you offer me now that you'll find from a Western woman. So with that, folks, our first podcast is over.
So that's it, guys. Thank you for watching for our first episode, and stay tuned for our next podcast.